Yeah, so some of the discussions I've had with the partners that we've worked with in the region is one, all the business units are operating in silos, so no one's really talking to each other. To where a solution like our amino platform is we're fully integrated, so we can see the effects that the breeder operation has on the broilers. How's my equipment performing in the hatchery on broiler operations? So having a solution where we're a one-stop shop to see that full traceability has been critical. How can I see the financial viability of a finished feed formula and the output on egg production or my cost per kg or my FCRs? Now with a solution like our amino platform, you can really see that.
Welcome everyone, this is MTech Accelerate. My name is Nikolai Shetihin and I have Jim Johnston with me as usual, and today we have a guest. Welcome Nathan Lamb. How are you doing, guys?
Doing good, Nick.
Doing good. Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
All right, so today we're going to talk about very exciting topic. I think we touched this a little bit in our previous episodes. So today we're going to talk about Asia, and it's kind of unique and interesting market from many different aspects. And we did a lot of implementations in that area, and we know that practices there in poultry are quite different. So from bird handling, business models, and everything. So, and sometimes it's quite challenging too, not only for software, but really it's highly competitive, and again, it's very fluid. So I know that Jim has quite a lot of experience working in that area and dealing with businesses there. So what do you think, Jim, is the key unique features of that area?
Yeah, Nick. I mean, I really love the Asian area from a poultry perspective. You know, the opportunity there is tremendous in terms of population growth, but also they've got a very vibrant poultry industry, and very good technically, and get really good performance from the birds, and so they've got technically proficient people, and they've got a market and a lot of consumers, a growing consumer market for protein and for poultry. So I've always got excited about visiting the Asian region, meeting people, talking chickens. Everyone knows I love to talk chickens. But specifically Asia is really an exciting opportunity for the poultry industry. And it's good to chat with Nate. Nate really, for want of a better introduction, Nathan Lamb is MTech's sales guy responsible for that region. So it's really good that he can join us today and have a chat. And Nathan's been around MTech for some time, quite a number of years, hey, but from the 2nd of January, he's now responsible for Asia. So it's going to be exciting working with you, Nathan, in the future. But yeah, Asia is a supermarket for chickens, and it's a great place to talk about over this next few minutes in the podcast.
All right, cool. Yeah, and you mentioned that the performance is quite good, and I just remember that whenever we've been doing some analytics and reports and stuff, I noticed for the first time for a couple of years that some of the performance in the standards, they've been higher than the breed standards, and I was quite amazed, because usually it's hard to reach because of the ideal birds and ideal scenarios, and there I saw some of the flocks then been overperforming those standards. So that was quite an interesting. And to prepare for today's session, we discussed what are the challenges in the area and in the region, because like any other region, and Asia still, faces some challenges. Some of them are the same as here in the West, and some of them are quite unique. So we gathered some key points from the experts from the industry, and those include production costs, disease challenges, and demand. So I'd like you guys to uncover those a little bit for our audience. So maybe Nathan, since you worked quite a lot in that region, maybe you can start on this.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, the three big ones with production, disease, and demand. Production is probably the biggest issue that's presenting the customers that I have worked with. again, as we know, raw materials cost is, has been on the rise, with situations happening all over the world, with the situation in Eastern Europe, where now we're having to buy from other markets such as corn and soya and stuff. So that has been a rising issue, and it's been challenging for the people that I've talked to really combat that. Also, labor is another big issue. No one's really recovered from the COVID pandemic. So now it's labor's an issue, but now we have to start paying more for labor that really wasn't into consideration a couple years ago. So that's been a primary focus, is one, getting the right people and keeping the people. But also now, based on that and based on demand, there's a huge focus on automation and technology. So that's another added cost that people are going to have to start looking at, and customers are going to look at, is how are we going to start automating this? What technologies are we going to be using that? But on the downside too is profitability for our smaller partners and smaller customers is starting to make them essentially go away. So they need to have kind of solutions to handle how are we going to combat our production costs? What are we going to do to remain competitive? What systems are we going to be doing? For diseases, I mean, AI and IBH are huge in the poultry right now, and trying to figure out ways to combat it. I mean, Jim, as you know, 30% of the market out there is still backyard growers. So with all the issues with AI, again, trying to figure out a way to kind of really control that and identify, where these problems are, how can we kind of regulate that and get further insight into the operations there. And then with demand, as you know, all across the world, everyone is trying to go for more of a healthier eating option. So that's making the demand in grocery stores and fast food restaurants further increase, because that's where the industry is leaning towards. And then also with the pork industry, with the African swine flu, that's just helping poultry really starting to be a more viable option. One, because it's one of the cheapest proteins, but it's also most nutrient dense, and we don't have to really worry about the African swine flu in there. So those are some of the big issues that I have immediately noticed. Obviously, there's going to be more, but those were the big three that have been presented to me. Jim?
Yeah, Nate, I mean, that absolutely correct. I mean, we obviously reached out and, as Nick said, asked a few people who live in the region and are associated with the industry for what they think are the big issues. And Nick listed them, and you've been through them all in your discussions there. And I think, I look at Rabobank's report for a feature there, the increase in raw material pressures, energy prices, labor, disease status. There's some real pressures on the industry at the moment, but we do know, that if successful companies in the region can control and manage efficiencies of their operations, they can stay competitive. We know that there will be demand, strong demand for poultry products in that region. And I noticed another report recently suggesting that the growth that the industry can enjoy over the next 5 years or so will exceed 3% in Indonesia year on year, and 2.5% in Malaysia. So we know there's strong demand for the industry's products, which is quite, the reason I get excited about that region so much. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, and another thing too is that I've noticed is the governments are really starting to get involved in how their customers are managing their operations too. So they're looking at more of a big data kind of output and what kind of information they can get. I was reading an article yesterday with, the Malaysian government. They're really trying to put emphasis on, hey, what kind of information can we get to kind of help me run my business? So again, that's another thing that, again, prior wasn't really heard of, is now we're having more insight into government regulating bodies to say, hey, we're looking at the industry here.
Yeah, that's really good news for the industry, I think, because usually government gives quite a good support to the companies. And also, you mentioned, guys, that quite a lot of automation and digitalization is going on in the area, and you can see it even in the regular day-to-day life. We've been visiting some really remote sites, and I was looking at my phone expecting to have no signal, but I had like perfect 4G, 5G, and everybody's using phones, everybody's on the mobile. So that aspect is also helps with improving the digitalization and like overall industry connectivity. And since you also mentioned news, maybe we can talk a little bit about that. And Nathan, like Jim mentioned, that you now like 100% focused on Asia, but you've been working quite a lot with that market over the years. So maybe you can just discuss a little bit about what are the main countries and regions that we are focusing on, and then discuss what are the trends that you see on a daily basis.
Yeah, of course. So my team and I are responsible for the Southeast Asia and Oceania regions with specifics on Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, but we can still help any partner that reaches out to us. So we're focusing on those big four countries in Southeast Asia, but we can branch out to anybody there. So from news in the region, there is one, population growth and the demand and requirement for food is huge. Over the past 10 years, production has doubled. So that is huge opportunities for people who are looking, one, to get into the industry, and their current providers there, that, hey, there is a huge opportunity and growth, which gets me very, very, very excited. Like Jim mentioned, Malaysia and Indonesia, to me, in my opinion, those are probably the two biggest areas where growth is really going to start taking off. Again, Thailand has been a huge player, but Malaysia, in my opinion, is really good. With the high materials, like we talked about with raw materials, with corn and those, just figure out a way to, one, how can we improve efficiency and get in the forefront of, well, we know our raw materials are going to be more expensive. What can we do? Whether it is, well, I know have more insight into my operation on when I'm going to run out of particular ingredients. When should I start negotiating with my vendors? At what optimal time to kind of combat that? With my finished products, what is a good way to get my cost per kg going to the live market or the plant? How can I get the most efficient birds? How can I reduce FCRs? And so that's obviously a huge one there. And then with the issues with their swine, again, that is, to me, one of a huge, probably the biggest opportunity for all poultry companies right there is, hey, now that we know because of the African swine flu, demand for poultry is going to be rising. And like I talked about too, with nutrition, again, it's the most affordable protein that we have in the market. So let's start leveraging the information that we can get to where we can, hey, we know that demand is going to increase. What can we do about it? What tools can we do? What people can we leverage to get that further insight? So those are some of the issues in the news that have really become a huge player, especially over the past 2 years. So again, very exciting times with that. And I'm very, very excited for the opportunity to work with our Asian partners across the world, because again, this is the biggest, in my opinion, opportunity for us to grow, as a company for MTech, but also as, as a consumer now. Now I have more options. I go into the grocery store, I have more options there. I have full traceability of, what I'm eating. So it's just very exciting times for the poultry industry in the Asian market.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think like all of these, what you're saying is just kind of resonates with what we do, because it looks like with many of those issues, or at least we can help, right? So the software can help and can at least mitigate some risks and help companies to perform and work better. Like even with the stuff like labor. Okay, so how we can help in labor. So there are opportunities there. How we can help with traceability and things like that. So let's probably start uncovering a little bit of what we can do as a software provider. What we can do to help those companies to grow more chicken, to get the chicken better, to have a traceability, and to help with all other issues to get that business more profitable and get that protein more affordable to the customer.
Yeah, so some of the discussions I've had with the partners that we've worked with in the region is, one, all the business units are operating in silos, so no one's really talking to each other. To our solution, like our amino platform, is we're fully integrated. So we can see the effects that the breeder operation has on the broilers. how's my equipment performing in the hatchery on my broiler operations? So having a solution where we're a one-stop shop to see that full traceability has been critical. How can I see the financial viability of a finished feed formula and the output on egg production or my cost per kg or my FCRs? Now with a solution like our amino platform, you can really see that. Show me every single broiler flock that's been fed these sets of formulas. What was the financial output? What was the actual performance of this? So that has been an eye-opening opportunity for a lot of the people that we have spoken with. Is you're a one-stop shop now. We don't have to worry about dealing with Excel spreadsheets, or we don't have to worry about managing 5 different systems. At MTech, we have that. We also have the ability to get you further insight into your operations, whether it's reporting, business intelligence, or supply chain management. For example, I'm sure you guys have talked to this on the podcast prior, but we have the ability to run profile or scenario-based solutions for your supply chain management. So what's the effect if I run my plant 5 days? Or what would happen if I ran it 6 days? What would the financial implication be? What would the production implication be? So now I have insight to look at that, but also we're talking about labor. So now everything in our systems can be calculated automatically, whether it's financial data, because we handle financial data. We can calculate your harvest schedules. We can calculate your egg productions, all automatically leveraging the latest and greatest technologies such as artificial intelligence. So that helps combat that labor issue. So now I don't really have to worry about finding the most highly skilled person because our solution has already built that for you. So now it just gives me further insight into my operations, and also having the ability for mobile compatibility. So I can take my cell phone on the farm, start recording data, and then if I have no signal, that's fine. As soon as I do, that data will sync to the protein or to our amino and database, and then all is well in the world. Now we're taking a proactive approach to farm management instead of being very reactive. So those are some of the main benefits that I've seen, and we're bringing everyone together, all business units together. So when we're having our high-level meetings, now I can leverage the MTech solutions and say, hey, through the Amino platform, now I can see how well my broiler department's doing, how well my hatchery, how well my breeder, my feed mills, all that stuff, and then tie it into the plant, because we have a plant solution as well. So very powerful tool on how we can leverage our solutions to every single business unit that each poultry company has. So again, makes me excited to talk about it. I can talk about this for hours on end, so I don't want to steal the show on here from Nick or Jim, but very, very powerful. I'm very passionate about it, so it is very good on that.
Yeah, it's really cool to see this energy, that's super. I really like it. And I really like the comment that you said that about the traceability and those gaps between different supply chain blocks. And I think this is quite common, especially for quickly developing markets, right? When everybody's trying to get more aggressive on what they do, to get more efficient, get more performance, better KPIs and stuff like that. But they work in silos, so breeders are doing their thing, and then the hatcheries doing their thing, and it's always like there is big gap, and there is a little tiny bridge between those two, and then they just throw Excel spreadsheets at each other, and that must go, because that's been giving the industry quite a lot of problems, and especially when there is a bad communication, there is always that tension, right? So who is in charge for certain issues? Is it the breeder department or is it hatchery? So, and with the software solutions that integrate all that goes away. There is only one answer, and it's a true answer that's supported by the data. So, and also you mentioned that the data is captured where it happens, whether it's a mobile phone or it's right in the system. So I think that's also important, and that lays the base, right? So whatever issue we're trying to tackle, whether it's disease challenges, or maybe there's a lack of transparency or something, there should be a really solid base of data capturing, so that then you can look at the performance KPIs, compare them with your cost KPIs, because that's important. What we're trying to do in the industry is trying to lower the cost of production, especially when raw materials you mentioned going up, very high prices now. All the electricity, all other energy bills are going up. So the margin is getting smaller and smaller. So we need to make sure that we use what we have the most efficient way and always compare production KPIs with cost KPIs. So is this change in livability or FCR or weight gain, does it really give me enough cost benefit so that I can continue working in that direction? Or maybe I should concentrate on something else entirely.
Oh yeah.
Well, Nick and Nate, you put your finger on a really important point. This whole integrated business thing is something that we talk about a lot in the industry. Every company's integrated, or the majority are, but that's not in effect really true. And a lot of companies are working in silos, as you've explained. And to me, the benefits are only fully there at bottom line once you start working together, once you create the visibility across that whole supply chain, and nobody's working in these little silos. And that's critically important to manage the risks to the business, but more importantly, supply chain management. There's a tremendous amount of efficiencies that we can bring to bear through proper supply chain management, through breeders, hatchery, feed mill to process, broilers into processing plant. Really, really important to have one system where all that data is brought together, and we're not just issuing the visibility on reports and performance and cost of production, as Nick has explained, but also you're able to manage as efficiently as possible that whole breeder through to processing plant supply chain, and really effectively manage that through using scenarios, as you explained, Nate. I mean, that system's very powerful for that. But again, one system, and one visibility on how we manage efficiency through the supply chain, critical, especially when industry, is having all these cost pressures on raw materials, as you've explained, energy, labor. How do we manage all of that collectively as an integrated business and manage it as efficiently as possible? So that, the MTech system certainly helps as far as all of that is concerned, for sure.
Yeah, and also there are, like we discussed now, the challenges that are in our direct control, like the data that we collect or how we exchange the data. But there are also a whole lot of things. We mentioned all kinds of disease that are happening in the poultry or happening in the swine. I think software also can help with those, maybe not to heal those animals, but to prevent, to see early signs of disease that are happening, to help, again, with traceability, to prevent cross-contamination, which is big. Because, once it's happening, and we know, like, for example, in the West or in Europe, if there is a disease, then they just lock down the whole big region. They don't even look at, like, what particular farms have the issue. So I think that's also quite a big thing, especially when you have the data about the samples and laboratory results in the system, so that you can isolate specific problem and where it happens, not just like, okay, somewhere on the north, okay, let's block all the north, or, let's not take product from those farms. But you can really find where issue originated and if there is a possibility of contamination elsewhere.
Yeah, so that's a great point, and I like the ability now to where we can have things such as our farm visit controls, or our visitor logs, as we call them in our solutions here, to where I know exactly which key people went to these particular areas, so I can say, okay, well, if there is a situation, what happens, who was all on my site, whether it's the hatchery or their particular farm, where did they go, so I can have that traceability. It's the stuff that you can do with a solution like Amino is incredible, and how to manage things like where people went, what happened. So it is very powerful and insightful tool. I used to work in projects just like what Nick did, or is currently doing, excuse me, is I have seen it to where people have in their hatchery, they have a tablet to say, okay, this is who I am. This is the company I represent. This is the time I'm here. Sync it to our database. And so, boom, there's our visitor log. It's very powerful because, again, as you know, biosecurity is huge. So identifying where people went, you have to have a solution that does that and ties it to whether I'm at the hatchery or I went to this particular farm to visit this particular flock. So very, very good tool to use with that.
Yeah, and Nathan, another key part of the software really is vaccination programs. We know vaccines are really important in the protection of poultry's health against disease. And another cool part of the system is being able to schedule activities, looking at what is the vaccination program for these birds, in this specific farm and in each of these houses. When should we provide vaccination? And the prompts in the system that can come to the farm manager to make sure that he delivers that vaccine at the right time into the right shed to the appropriate birds is very, very important. And again, that can be managed within the MTech suite. And going on from that, we manage within the solution the mortality, but also the health, the postmortems, anything associated with health. The laboratory results, again, can all be visible within the system. So it's a great tool for veterinarians to have a view on what's happening on all the birds around the different farms and each of the houses. And if we get the data discipline right, and for me that's daily entry of what's happening in the houses by the farm managers. So every day the data goes into the MTech system. It means that your veterinarian has visibility on mortality patterns on a daily basis, on culling levels, and it just creates that really powerful tool when it comes to flock health and disease management. So there's a lot there, eh? And there's a lot we've discussed today, and it's been nice to focus on Asia. And great, Nathan, to have you involved in the discussion, seeing as it's your territory and your area for sales of MTech. So welcome to that challenge, and it's fantastic to see your enthusiasm and passion for the region, and I'm sure that will continue. And today, we've discussed, in summary, we've discussed the pressures on the industry, the cost pressures, the disease pressures that are on the industry, and also on the positive side, the demand for our product and the growing population, the growing demand for poultry in Asia. So it makes it a really exciting place for all of us connected with the poultry industry. From an MTech perspective, we discussed at length the opportunities really for supply chain planning, for visibility, digitalizing that whole farming process, and connecting the farms. And like Nick, it's great to experience how connected a lot of the Asian countries are through cellular networks, and they're certainly ahead of many parts of even here in the UK, I've got to say, which is still quite difficult to get connectivity in some places. But yeah, I think through digitalization, we're able to offer solutions that can drive efficiency and visibility, as we've discussed, and making these businesses operate as truly integrated poultry companies in that true sense. So, hey, great talking to you both today about Asia and how MTech can help the journey of ever improving efficiencies within the poultry industry in that part of the world. Thanks. It's been a pleasure speaking to you both.
Perfect. Thank you for having me, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Like Jim said, I really like the energy. So good luck with Asian market, and thanks for coming and sharing your insights and information with us and everyone who is watching. And yeah, let's wrap it up. That's done. And for those who listen or watch this, if you don't want to miss any new episodes, please follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and Twitter. And see you in the next episode.